Begin today the Gemara on Daf Yutes Amud Beis. We begin the third Perek of Masechta Shavuos. Here is where the Mishnah, the Gemara, finally begins discussing the subject of the Masechta Shavuos, the halachis of a person that takes upon himself to do something with an oath, and he must fulfill it. The one that doesn't fulfill an oath, as it said before, in the beginning of the Masechta, Shavuos Time Shein Arba, that you're chayiv to bring a carbon oil v'yayred. So here, we're going to learn all the halachas about Shavuos. There's different kinds of Shavuos. We start with what's called Shavuos Bitui. When a person utters and says something that he's going to do, something about the past. Let's see. So as mentioned, that the Shavuos that we're speaking about are two that are divided then into four. What are these two that are divided into four? Shavuos shaychol v'shelo yaychol. If a person makes a Shavuos regarding the future, saying that I will eat, or saying that I will not eat. Now this is the two that are mentioned clearly in the pasuk, where it says that the shvuah was lahara or lahaitiv. Lahara means something that's negative, not to do, not to eat, or lahaitiv, yes to do, to go ahead and eat. So if the person does not keep his shvuah, he doesn't. If he says he's not going to eat and he eats, he has to bring a carbon oil v'yayred. Or on the past as well, shelo yachalti. It's making sha'achalti, that is sha'achalti v'shelo yachalti, makes a shvu about the past that I did eat or I did not eat, and it's not true. That's another case of a shvu that we darshan. The Gemara is going to bring later darshan from the pasuk that even though in the pasuk it says future tense, but we're marbeh that in this case as well he's chayiv to bring a carbon if what he said is not true. Now shvu shelo yachol, if a person makes a shvu that he will not eat, but va'achal, and he went and ate kolshu, just a tiny drop, less than a kazayas, less than just a little bit, chayiv. He'll be chayiv a carbon. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. Amru loi le Rabbi Akiva, the Chachamim say to Rabbi Akiva, heicha metzinu ba'oichel kolshu shu chayiv. Where do we find, by any of the things that is also to eat, that if you eat only a kolshu that you would be chayiv? That's shazeh chayiv, that you're saying that over here as well, that he would be chayiv when he makes a shvuah, not to eat, that even a kolshu he would be chayiv. Usually what's the shir? That's always learned out, Allah Chalamesh Misinai, that you would be chayiv if you eat something which is forbidden, a kazayas. And here Rabbi Akiva is saying that this is a kolshu. Why is this different? Amalem Rabbi Akiva, so Rabbi Akiva responds to them in a similar style, the way that question was asked to him. From where do you find such a thing that a person just says words and that's enough of a reason that he should have to bring a carbon? This person says words and he didn't keep his word, and that is b'chayiv him to bring a carbon. So what's the point that Rabbi Akiva is trying to say? According to Rashi, Rabbi Akiva is saying that over here, the reason why it's even a kolshu, because look at the word that he said. He said, I'm not going to eat. When a person says, I'm not going to eat, it means he's not going to eat anything, not even a kolshu. So there's no reason to say that only a sheer kazayas, he would be chayav to bring a carbon. Okay, so according to Rashi, that's the pshat in the Gemara, but Tosfos says later on that because over here you see a special chumrah that you bring a carbon even just for a medaber, that's the reason why we're more machmir that he's chayiv even just for a kolshu, not only a kazayas.
Yeah, every carbon is a medaber. A person makes a neder that he's going to bring a carbon.
No, but that's not a chiyuv. We're talking about it's mechayev. Usually a chatos. Every carbon chatos, it's an aveda that a person does b'maisa, which is mechayev a carbon. And a dov, and neder, that's something else. He's asking, where do you find a chiyuv of a carbon? This is the only carbon that you chayev to bring. That's because of words that a person said that he didn't keep. So the Gemara begins with being medayik in the language of the Mishnah that it said shvuah she'oichel. Person makes a shvuah that she'oichel, this expression, which the Mishnah interpreted that to mean that it means that he's going to eat. So in fact, the Gemara, is that true? That this term of she'oichel means the achilna mashma, that I will eat? But I'll ask you from what it says regarding this lashon that shvuah loy oichelach. A person says, I take upon myself an oath that I will not eat from you. So what does that mean? It clearly means that he's making a shvuah that he's not going to eat. Now shvuah she oichelach, when he says a lashon, a shvuah that seemingly he's saying shvuah that I will eat. So, but it actually does not mean that. Shvuah she oichelach means I am asering upon myself with a shvuah. If I eat from you, this that I will eat from you, that's what it means. All right, so in other words, when he says shvuah she'oichelach, it's saying a shvuah that he will not eat, because she'oichelach will be also with a shvuah. Now, when he says a lashon loy shvuah she'lo oichelach, if I will not eat from you, then there's no shvuah here, then there's no isser of a shvuah here, so then what is he saying? From what he's saying that there is no, if I don't eat, you understand the opposite and the positive, that if I will eat from you, then there is a shvuah here, there's an isser of a shvuah. So in all these cases, asr, it's going to be asr for this person to eat. So you clearly see here that the lashon she'oichel means a shvuah that I will not eat. So how does our Mishnah say shvuah she'oichel means a shvuah that he will eat? Amar Abaye answers la'olam de'achilna mashma. Really, when a person says this term shvuah she'oichelach, it's translated as it seems literally the shvuah that I will eat. Now, what it says here in the Braise, loy kasha. It's not a contradiction. Kan, in the Braise, the case is b'misarvim boilecha, when there was somebody that was begging him to eat. And Kan in the Mishnah, b'sheim misarvim boilecha, when nobody was begging him to eat. And the Gemara spells it out. Masnisen, in the case of the Mishnah, b'sheim misarvim boilecha. The Mishnah, nobody's begging this person to eat, and he's just coming and saying, shvuah she'oichel. So that simply means a shvuah that I will eat. Braise, however, in the Braise, the case is, b'misarvim boilechel. Somebody is begging this person to eat. And the Ka'amar, and he's responding and saying, loy achilna, loy achilna. I'm not interested in eating, I'm not interested in eating. So then, when he's asked again to eat, so the Chika Mishtaba, when he's swearing, and as response to this, then he says, shvuah she'oichelach. What is he saying? Hachi Ka'amar. This is what he's saying. Shvuah she'oichelach. I'm swearing that I'm not going to eat, because he doesn't want them to bother him anymore. So even though he's using the term she'oichelach, it means shvuah that I'm asering on myself with the isser of a shvuah, she'oichelach, this achila, this food that I would eat. So that means he's making a shvuah not to eat. So that's only in that circumstance. But otherwise, the lashon of shvuah she'oichelach, we understand it in the literal sense that it means a shvuah that he will eat. Ravashi says,
how do you touch on the word shvuah she'oichelach? That means lo yechelach.
I explained a few times.
I know you did, but
Shvuah she'oichelach means I'm asering with a shvuah this that you're begging me to eat. That's what he's saying. Shvuah she'oichelach. I'm asering with a shvuah this that you're begging me to eat. So that's when someone's begging him to eat. But in a regular circumstance, you take a go with the pashut sounding of what he's saying. A shvuah that I will eat. Ravashi says a different shot. Tani shvuah she'i oichelach. It's not as stated because in the Braise, when it says shvuah she'oichelach, it really should say in the Braise the word she'i. That he said a shvuah that she'i oichelach, that I will not eat from you. If a person says shvuah she'oichelach, under all circumstances it means a shvuah that I will eat. But if he says she'i oichelach, that means a shvuah that I will not eat. So the Gemara asks on this answer of Ravashi, so what's the chiddush of the Braise to say this example? Answers the Gemara, because that is, I would think when a person says she'i oichelach lishnei de iskilele, that we can't consider this to be a clear shvuah, a shvuah that I will not eat, because she'i oichelach, it's possible that the person stuttered, that the person wanted to say shvuah she'oichelach, and it came out as shvuah she'i oichelach. And the Rishonim add, the reason I would think this is because it's not the usual expression. When you want to say a shvuah that I will not eat, you say shvuah shaloi. The fact that it's she'i oichel, it may be that he was just stuttering, and that's why it came out that way. Kamash Malam, therefore the Braise is saying that the term shvuah she'i oichelach is a clear term to mean that he will not eat. Okay. Now the Gemara begins with explaining other expressions. When a person makes a shvuah, it's not just a term of shvuah, which is obviously that he's taking upon himself with an oath not to do something or to do something, but there's other expressions as well. Tanur Rabbanon, so we learned in the Braise, mivta. If a person says the term mifta, which literally means just a utterance, a clear utterance. So a person says mifta, that I will not eat this bread. That's a shvuah. The word mifta means a term of a shvuah. Isser. If a person uses the term of a isser on something, he says this bread should be a isser, or I take upon myself rather. I take upon myself a isser regarding this bread. Shvuah. That's also a shvuah. Now, the Braisa goes on to say, Isur, this that we just said, that it's forbidden for a person when he uses the term of Isur. So now, is that the case? So the Braisa now says, if you'll say that this term of Isur means a Shvuah, then chayiv. Then yeah, so since it means a term of a Shvuah, so if he doesn't keep the Shvuah, he'll be chayiv. Vimlav, if this term Isur is not a term of a Shvuah, potter. Then it'll be potter. There's the lashon of the Braisa. So the Gemara asks the obvious question on what the Braisa is saying here. Im ata oime is a shvuah. The Brisa goes on to say, if you'll say the term Isser is a term that means a Shavuot, but Va'amrit is a Shavuot. The Brisa first says a fact, that the term Isser means a Shavuot. And then it goes on to say, if you'll say that it means a Shavuot, then it'll be Chayiv, and if not, not. So how can the Brisa say this? Amar Abaye, so Abaye explains, the Pshat in this Brisa is as follows. Hachikama. Mifta Shavuot. The term Mifta means a Shavuot. The Gemara will soon bring the source from the pasuk where you see this. Now, the term Isar, if a person says that I take upon myself that this bread should be like a Isar, what does this term mean? It's not a regular Shavuot. Mitvis b'Shavuot. It's like the concept of being matvis a Shavuot. What does matvis a Shavuot mean? Matvis b'Shavuot means if there's already one bread, that's Asar, with a Shavuot. And now you come and say, a second bread should be similar, I'm matvis, meaning I'm comparing and saying that this bread, the second bread, should be just like the first bread. Also to me, with a shvuah, just like the first bread. That's what the concept of matvis means. So the term isar means not a direct and clear expression of a shvuah, but it actually means an expression of hatfasa of a shvuah, even though he only has one bread in front of him. There's only one bread in front of him, but what the term Isser means, he's saying that this bread in front of me should be Asr like another bread, which is Asr with a Shvuah. Where do you see it in the word Isser? The Gemara is still going to bring the source in the Pasuk, but the Rishonim say you see it in the word Isser, because what's the literal translation of the word Isser? Isser means connected, meaning you're connecting that this bread should be connected and similar to another bread that's already Asr with a Shvuah. That's what the term Isser means. So now the Brisa goes on to say, if that's what the meaning of this term Isser means, so now Isser, so this term, will it actually be Asr? So this Isser of the term Isser, if you'll say that regarding a Shvuah, even if he didn't directly swear that this bread I'm asering upon myself, but he's just saying that this bread should be Asr like another piece of bread. If that works regarding a Shvuah, and it takes effect, so then over here it'll take effect, because that's what the word Isser means, and Chayiv will be Chayiv. Vim lav, if by a Shvuah, when you say that I take upon myself a Shvuah, that this should be Asr like something else which is already Asr, that doesn't work, so then Potter. So then it'll be Potter, because in order for the Shvuah to take effect, it's only if he clearly says that I'm making a Shvuah that this is Asr to me. That's what the Brisa is saying. So the suffix of the Brisa is whether Hatfasa b'Shvuah takes effect or not. So Abai is explaining. Abai is explaining what the Brisa says. The words Isser Shvuah doesn't mean Isser is a Shvuah mamish. It means Isser is a hatfasa of a Shvuah. It's sort of an indirect Shvuah. And therefore, it'll be totally whether this concept of hatfasa works by Shvuah or not. This is Rashi's prat in the Gemara. Tosfos has a different shot. Okay, but Rashi says we're focusing on just the word Isser. If he says this word Isser, it means Hatfasa b'Shvuah. Tosfos basically says that the pshat in the Gemara is, when it says here Isser Shvuah, it means the term Isser that it says in the Torah. And the term Isser in the Torah means Hatfasa b'Shvuah. And therefore we're not talking about a person that actually said the word Isser. He didn't say the word Isser. He was Matfis b'Shvuah. He said that this bread should be a Shvuah meat like another bread which is already Asr. And that's what the discussion here is. Will that take effect or not? Okay, now the Gemara brings the source in the Psukim. Omimai, the Mifta Shvuah, where do you see that the term Mifta, which literally means an utterance, that it means a term of a Shvuah? Because the Chsiv, the Pasuk says, Oy nevesh shishava, a person is swearing Levate, b'sfasayim, and he's saying an utterance with his lips. So that you see, Levate is a term that it says in the Pasuk regarding a Shvuah. If so, Isser Nami, the term of Isser, should also be a Shvuah, not just like a secondary Shvuah, like a Hatfasa of Shvuah. Because the Chsiv, the Pasuk says, Kol neder v'chol Shvuas Isser. So it says neder, and then it says Shvuas Isser, a Shvuah of saying the term Isser. So Isser is a term of a Shvuah. So the Gemara answers this by asking the question in the opposite sense. Mimai de Isser mitvis b'Shvuahu. Why are you saying that the term Isser does not mean literally a Shvuah, but the term Isser means that there's already an existing Shvuah? And now you're just being matfis. You're connecting a second thing to the first Shvuah. So where's your source? Because the Chsiv, there's another pasuk where it says, Oy Asra Isar al Nafsha Bishvuah. So when it says here, Isar Bishvuah, what does that mean? That you're saying now, the term of Isar connected to a Shvuah that already pre-exists. Bishvuah and a Shvuah that was there before. That's how we see this in the pasuk. If so, says the Gemara, so mifta nami, regarding the term of mifta, I could tell you the same thing. Because aksiv, there's a pasuk that says, l'chol asher yivate ha'adam, whatever a person utters with his mouth, b'shvua, in a shvua, which sounds like that there's already an existing shvua, and the mifta is just connecting a second piece of bread to the first piece of bread, which is also with a shvua. So where do we see that mifta means directly a shvua mamish? So Elam Abaye, so therefore Abaye says, by mifta we find another pasuk. Mifta shvua mehacha. There's another pasuk where it says, V'mhaya yisiyah le'ish. A woman gets married, unuderea leo, and she has nedarim upon her. Oy miftas faseh asher asra al nafsha. Miftas faseh, what she uttered with her mouth, that she asked upon herself. Now in this pasuk it just says miftas faseh. Vilu shvua le'kama. Doesn't mention the expression of the word shvua in this pasuk. So if so, b'may asra atzma. How did she answer herself here? It says first a neder, that's a vow. Then it says mifta. So what's this mifta? The answer is, it's b'mifta. The word mifta itself means a shvua. You can't say that mifta is connected to a pre-existing shvua. No, mifta itself in this pasuk you clearly see means a shvua. But the term isser in the Torah, it always says the term isser together with the term shvua, which means that there's a shvua before, and then you say the term isser to bring that shvua on something else. Now this is all Abaye's pshat in the Braise regarding this term of the word isar, that is talking about the hatfasa of a shvua. Rava says no, la'olamei malach. Really, the pshat in the Braise is mitvas b'shvua lav kemoitzi shvua mipiv dami. When a person is matvis b'shvua, if you would say that when he says isar, it means that there's already a shvua on a bread, and now he's saying that something else should be similar to it, that's not a shvua. It doesn't count for a shvua, and it will not asa anything on him. So what's the pshat in this Braise? Mifta shvua. First it says the term mifta means a clear shvua. And then when it says iser, it's saying iser nami shvua. Iser also means a shvua, just like mifta. But now, when the Braise goes on to ask the question, what is this iser of the word iser? It says it'll be chayev or potter, if it is a lashon of a shvua. So it means as follows. Isre, the iser, this iser that comes on a person when he uses this term of iser. So if you look in the pasuk, you'll see hitiloi hakasav bein neder l'shvua. The term iser in the Torah, in the pasuk that was just quoted before, is mentioned between a neder and a shvua. Now a neder and a shvua are similar, but they're not exactly the same. A vow is when a person is saying that this object becomes a forbidden object, and therefore the person may not have any benefit from it. So the neder is focused on the cheftza, on the object. The term shvua is focused on the person. The person is asking upon himself that I will not do this action. So for example, regarding food, the neder is that you're saying that this food is forbidden food, so therefore I can't eat it. The term shvua means something else. I am asking upon myself to eat this food. So it goes on the gavra. That's the difference between a neder and a shvua. Now, the other relevant difference over here is that by a neder, there's no chiyuv of a carbon if one doesn't keep his neder. By yachal devare, it's a lav. But by a shvua, if one takes upon himself with a shvua and he doesn't keep it, then he's chayav to bring a carbon. So therefore, now this term of isar, which says in the Torah between the word neder and the term shvua, so now it can be either way. So haitziyah b'loshen neder. If it's said in a loshen that you see that it's connected to a neder, so then it's going to be a neder, and then he's not going to be chayav a carbon if he doesn't keep this. It's a lav, but not a carbon. B'loshen shvua, but if it's said in a loshen that he means a shvua, then it will be a shvua. So the Braise is saying it's taka term which could mean shvua, and it's aser. But it will depend how this is said. Because in the Torah you find that it's between neder and shvua. Where do we find the Torah that it's in between? The pasuk we quoted before. Ve'im beis isha nedara. And that's what it says. It says the word neder, and then it says oy asra Israel nafsha, and then it says bishvua. So the term isra is between neder and shvua, and therefore it can be either a neder or a shvua. Okay, but the point of Rav's pshat here is that the term isra means a shvua mamish. There's no such a thing of hatfasa b'shvua. You can't be matfis to as a secondary shvua, something else that was already usher to ask something upon yourself. Abaye says there is such a thing as atfasa b'shvua. Says the Gemara, v'azlu l'tamayim. What Abaye and Rava are arguing here regarding the pshat and the Braise, they follow their line of reasoning somewhere else. Because Vitmer, we learned that they clearly argued about this. Matfis b'shvuah, when one makes a shvuah by saying that this bread, that I take upon myself a shvuah, that this bread should be like another bread, which is also Abaye Oma k'moitzi shvuah mipiv. Abaye says that that's like saying a clear, direct shvuah that I'm asking this bread upon myself, and it's also. Rava says no. Lav k'moitzi shvuah mipiv dami. This kind of secondary shvuah to aser like something else. It's not like he's saying a shvuah, and it will not be aser. So we clearly see here that Abaye, even though in the lashon of the Braise it said it like a suffix according to Abaye, but here Abaye is saying that we learned from the Braise that it will be also the lashon of hatfasa b'shvua. But Rava says no, there's no hatfasa by shvua. So the Gemara asks Meisvei. It says in a Braise, Eizehu Isser ha'omer b'Torah. What is this term Isser that the Torah says? So the Braise spells it out. Ha'imir, a person says, Harei alai shelo yochel basar. A person says, he takes upon himself, I will not eat this piece of meat. Or I will not drink this wine. And today. And then the person says, how? Because it should be, this meat or this wine is today should be keyoim, like the day, shemeis bayaviv, he's saying like the day of the yard side of his father, he would fast on that day. Or keyoim shemeis by pliny, or like a day that someone else's yard site that the person would fast on. Or keyoim shenerik by Gedalia ben Achikam, or like the day that Gedalia ben Achikam was killed, which is the same Gedalia, the day that's a fast day. Or keyoim shera Yerushalayim b'chobana, or like the day that he saw Yerushalayim in its state of destruction, which is a day that he fasts. So he's saying that today wine and meat should be also to me like the other day that is a fast. So then also, this is the term of isar that it'll be also. Now, Shmuel explained the pshat in this Braise that what does it mean? That what the person is saying is that this day should be like another day, which he already accepted upon himself a neder that other day would be aser, and now he's saying that this day should be aser like that day. Now you do see over here from the lashon of what Shmuel is saying is that this Braise is talking about a neder, not about a shvuah. Okay, now even though the Braise uses a term which sounds more like a shvuah because it says harei olai shelo yochel basar, that's not the usual term of a neder. A neder would be harei zu aser. He's referring to the food, as I mentioned before on the text. But nevertheless, for whatever reason, the Gemara is teaching this Braise as a neder. And now, so the Gemara explains, what do we see here in this Braise? What kind of a neder is this person making? So says the Gemara, Bishleim ala Abaye, according to Abaye, it's understood how this takes effect. Midematfes neder. If by a neder, when a person says that this object or this bread should be aser like the other bread that I made a neder that's aser, and that works, even though I didn't clearly say that this bread should be aser, but he says that this should be like the other one, that takes effect. And like in this case, he's saying this day should be like another day which I took upon myself to fast. So b'shvuah, matvis b'shvuah, shvuah. The same also regarding a shvuah, when a person says, I swear for myself that it should be aser to me to eat this bread like another bread, that will also take effect. So this is like Abaye says, that there's a concept of matvis b'shvuah. But according to Rava, that says that you can't be matvis by a shvuah. So the Gemara understands that it's the same by a neder. You can't be matvis by a neder, you can't be matvis by a shvuah. So therefore, according to Rava, how could he say that there's no such a thing if the Braise clearly says there is? This is Rashi's pshat in the Gemara. Tosfos here, though, disagrees with this. Tosfos says that this concept of hatfase by a neder is a clear mishnah in Masechta Nedarim. Nobody could disagree. There's a clear mishnah that says that by Nedarim, you make a neder. One of the ways to make a neder is through hatfase. Okay, but this is how Rashi learns the Gemara here. Amalach Rava, so Rava answers, you have to answer and explain this Braise and what Shmuel said differently. Not what like we were understanding that this is a tfasa, that this is not a direct neder. It's only a neder that you're saying it should be like something else. That's not the pshat here. Rather, the pshat is Eizehu Isser Neder Ha'amu B'Torah, or maybe you go this in the Gemara Isur. If you look in Rashi, it says Isur with a vav. What is the Isser? The regular Isser of a neder, a direct neder, not a neder that's atfasa. What's the regular neder that Torah says? Ha'emer Harei Alai Shaloi Echol Basar V'Shaloi Yashte Yayin. So he clearly expressed the neder, what the neder is, that this basar should be asar or this yayin should be asar. And then he adds and says, when he says what the Issa should be like, Kiyayim shemeis by Aviv, Kiyayim shenerek by Pliny, like a yard site, or like his father, or another yard site. And on this, V'ama Shmuel explains, V'hu shenadu ruba ma'isa yayim. When is this neder going to take effect? Only if he says that the neder that I'm making now is similar to another day, and that other day is also asr like a neder, then the neder is going to take effect. Meaning, if the person wants to, this is the pshat, the way that Rishonim explain this according to Rashi, if the person wants to make a neder and say, this wine should be asr to me, this meat should be asr to me, fine, it'll be asr. He doesn't have to add anything else. That's a clear neder. But if he's going to add a clarification and say that this wine or this meat should be asr to me like something else, now we have to see what he was saying like. If he's going to say that it's like something else, which is also a neder, so then we know that what he meant to say here is that this should be a neder. But if he's going to say like something else, which is not also with a neder, if he's going to say like something else, which is already asr minat Torah, it's like he's going to say like a piece of chazer, which is already asr minat Torah, then you can't say that what he's saying here is going to be a neder, because he's comparing it to something else which is not a neder. So then the neder will not take effect. But it doesn't mean that he has to compare. You don't have to compare by neder. You could have just said that this is asr. And this is also not the concept of hatfasa b'shvua. Hatfasa means that he's just comparing and saying, this bread should be like that bread. No. Here he's spelling out l'chatchila. This wine should be asr, this meat should be asr. And then he's adding and clarifying what he means with his shvua like something else. And that Shmuel says, that something else that you're comparing to has to be a dova hanodur. Then we know what you mean, that you mean a real neder. So the Gemara says, my time, how do we know that there's this limitation that only if he compares to another neder, so then we know that this is what he means now with his neder? Because Amakra ish ki yider neder Lashem, it says the term of yider and neder, the two expressions here, what that means is, ad she yider bedova hanoder, that when he makes a neder and he says that this should be asr to me, if he's comparing it to something else, it has to be compared to something else, which is also a neder. That's the pshat in this. So it has nothing to do with hatfasa b'shvua or hatfasa b'neder. So it sounds like, according to Rashi, it's saying, according to Rava, this concept of hatfasa does not exist, not by a shvua, and seemingly it sounds like not even by a neder. So the Gemara, according to this pshat, when it says here that what he's saying is kiyoim shemeiz boy oviv, that he's comparing it to another day where he already made a neder, and it uses the example like a day of a yard side of his father. In fact, the Gemara pshit, it's obvious. So according to Rashi, the title of this question pshit is, why is the Braisa using specifically this example of Yom Shemeis B'Yaviv? And it could be any other neder of any other day that is asr that he made a neder not to eat on that other day. What's the example of specifically like a yard side of his father? So the Gemara Taka says there's no chiddush specifically in this case. Kiyayim shenarek by Gedalia ben Achikam itzrechle. The chiddush over here is when he compares it to some Gedalia. That's a chiddush that this would be a good neder. Why? Because I would think to say, Kiv in the Chiloi Nodar on the day of Tzim Gedalia, even if you don't make a personal neder. So Nami Yosser. It's also Yosser. It's one of the fasts of the year that everybody has to fast. So Kinoda Nami Loi Haviale Iser, if the person would make a neder, that I take upon myself with a neder to fast on the day of Tzim Gedalia. It's anyways also. What power does that neder have? So I would think that doesn't work at all. But v'hai lav mitvas benederu. So therefore, when he's making his neder now, and he's saying that it should be like the day of Tzim Gedalia, but Tzim Gedalia is not a day of a neder. The Lashon of the Gemara here, mitvas, is not the concept of atfasa beneder. It just means he's not comparing it to another day, which is asr upon him with a neder. Kamash Malon, therefore, this Braisa teaches that even though Tzim Gedalia is a day which is Asr anyways, but if the person wants to add a second Isser and say that the day should become Asr with a Neder, it will take effect. As Rashi here brings, that a person could take upon himself a Neder on a Dvar Mitzvah, just like a Divra Dvar Rishus. Gemara will explain this later here in the Pedic. Even though it's already Asr, he could make a Neder, and therefore that day of Tzim Gedalia could be a day which is Asr upon him with a Neder. That's Rashi's pshat. Another pshat, which Rashi brings not to be good, but another pshat here is, Taisa speaks about it, that Tzim Gedalia is not Asr Minat Torah. It's only Asr Minat Rabbanon. And therefore, it will work to say that it should be Asr like Tzim Gedalia. So the Gemara, the Gemara begins another Indian over here. First the Gemara just concludes and brings, Va'af Rabbi Yechanan Savala Lahad Rava. Rabbi Yechanan agrees to Rava's opinion about this whole thing here. Because the Chiyasi Ravin, Amr Rabbi Yechanan, Mifta La'echalach, whether the person uses the term Mifta, that I will not eat from you, or he says Isra La'echalach, uses the term Isra, I will not eat from you, Shvua. This is a direct and clear Shvua. Not like Abaye that said that Isser is just a hatfasa. It's like you have two pieces of bread and you're saying one should be like the other. That's what you see in the Lashon of Rabbi Yechanan. Okay, now another thing that Rabbi Yechanan said. Ki asa Rav Dimi, Omer Rabbi Yechanan. Oichel v'lo yoichel. The shvuah that a person makes in the future tense, I will eat or I will not eat, that's a sheker. And then it was a lie because the person didn't keep his shvuah. V'azarasei mahacha. The warning, the source in the title for the law, the warning is where the pasuk says, "Lo yishavu b'shmi la-shaker." Do not swear my name falsely. So that sheker refers to this case for the future. Now, achalti v'lo yachalti, in the case where the person makes a shvuah regarding the past that I ate or that I didn't eat, so that's called a shav. That's a shvuah regarding something that he's saying something which is pointless. What does the word shav mean? Shav means when there's something which is in vain. Pointless, in vain, exactly. So now, this concept of shvuah shav, as we'll see later here in the Masechta, usually refers to a person that says regarding a rock, he swears that this rock is a piece of gold. So that's an obvious shvuah in vain. It's so therefore similar when a person says regarding a chalti v'lo yachalti, in the past, the azhara from this is similar to shvuah shav. V'azarasei mehacha. Therefore, the warning for this is from the pasuk where it says, "Loisisa Hashem Hashem Elokecha lashav." That goes on the past. Okay, now just to clarify, the Gemara does not mean to say that when a person says achalti v'lo yachalti, it goes into the category shvuah shav, because in the concept of shvuah shav, in the example that I mentioned before, a person says in a rock that it's a piece of gold, you don't bring a carbon for that. That's something that everybody sees that it's a rock, and you said it's gold. That is malchus, but not a carbon. Shvuah shav of achalti v'lo yachalti that the Mishnah is saying here is actually in the category of shvuah sheker, where you bring a carbon for it. But what the Gemara is saying is that the azhara, the lav, where is the source for the lav? Not the carbon. The carbon is part of shvuah sheker, but the lav is learned from the words Leisisa Shem Hashem L'kecha Lashav, because shav includes two things. Shav includes a case where you're making a shvuah that's in vain regarding something that everybody knows is a lie, and it also refers to something that not everybody knows, but it's going on the past. That's also included in the azhara of shav. Now, kainamais, all of the nedarim that a person makes a neder. As I mentioned before, neder is different than a shvuah. What's the source that one has to keep the neder? So if he doesn't, oiver b'lo yachal devarei. The lav of that, the source is from the words lo yachal devarei. So the Gemara asks on the way it's divided here, these three categories. Meisvei in a brayse it says shav v'sheker echotein, that a shvuah shav and a shvuah sheker are one. What does it mean when it says that they're one? Rabbi Yechanan just divided. That is what you learn from sheker. The word sheker goes on the future. The word shav goes on the past. So don't you think it means, says the Gemara, my lav mid shav l'sha'avar, that the word shav, the shvuah shav, which is a shvuah in vain, goes on the past. Af sheker nami l'sha'avar, the term sheker in the Torah, when it says sisa Hashem l'kecha lashav, that means on the avar. In other words, like when a person says on a rock that it's like a piece of gold. And then when it says in the Torah the word shvuah sheker, what does sheker mean? Sheker does not mean for the future, oichel v'lo oichel. The word sheker in the Torah means also on the sha'avar, that he says about the past, I ate or I did not eat. There's a difference between them though. By shav, this is something that everybody knows about, that it's a lie. It's clearly a shvuah in vain. That's what the term shav means. The term sheker means sort of a personal lie regarding the past, not something that everybody knows. When a person says about the past, I ate or I did not eat, and that's what the term sheker in the Torah means. It's also l'shavar. In other words, what this brayse is saying is that from where would there be a warning about a shvuah that a person makes for the future, that there's a law for this? That's not learned out from the word sheker. It's learned out from lo yachal devarei, that he shouldn't break his word that he made for the future. But regarding the past, shvuah sheker means the past. Similar to shav, which means the past. That's what it sounds like the brayse is saying. So alma achalti v'lo yachalti shekeru. The word achal, when a person says the shvuah on the past, that's what the shvuah sheker means. So the Gemara says there's no raya from this brayse. That's not what the brayse meant when it says shav and sheker are echadein. Midi area is the brayse saying that you have to compare it in this sense that they're both l'sha'avar, they're both going past tense. Hakadisa v'hakadisa. Each one of them is what they are. Shav means for the past, sheker means for the future, like Rabbi Yechanan said before. So now, umay davar echere. So then what did the Brisa mean when it was comparing them? Regarding what are they compared if one is the past and one is the future? And says the Gemara, the bedibur echad nemru. What they're being compared for is the fact that in the Aseres HaDibros, the two terms of shav and sheker, the Eibishter said simultaneously. Because if you look in the Aseres HaDibros of Yisroi, the first time, and then when it's in Pashas Vaschano, the second time, once it says shav and once it says sheker, because the Eibishter said it simultaneously. Kedetanya, as we learned in the Brisa, similar, Zacha v'shomer bedibur echad nemru. When it says Zacher v'Shomer, and it says Adibris, it says one Zacher, and then the second time it says Shomer, it was said together. Masha'ein apeh yochel ledaber, that what a person's mouth cannot utter two words together, Masha'ein ha'ozen yochel l'shmoya, and you can't hear two things together. They should say them both together. And the same thing with Shav and Sheker, so it says once Shav and once Sheker, because they should say them both together. That's a tight for this. What the Gemara asks, that's what the Brisa is saying. What is it teaching me? When it comes to Shabbos, where it says Zochar Yom Shabbos Lekatrein Shomer, B'dibur Echad Nemru, when it says that it was said together, there's something that this is relevant for. Because Ravada Barave teaches what Ravada Barave said. Ravada Barave, Noshim Chayovais B'Kiddush Hayom. Women are obligated in Kiddush to make the Kiddush, and this is the Kiddush of a Friday night when you Mekadosh Shabbos. Dvar Torah, they're Chayiv Minat Torah. Why? Because the Makro Zochar V'Shomer. It says Zacher v'Shomer, and they're said b'dibur echad. So therefore, kol sheyeshnu b'shmire, yeshnu b'schire. Whoever is chayiv to keep Shabbos, the shmire means to keep Shabbos, not to do any malacha. A lav, which a woman is chayiv in, yeshnu b'schire is also chayiv in the schire to remember Shabbos, to make kiddush. So v'hani nosher v'isnu b'shmire, isnu nami b'schire. That's what it's coming to teach. That it said b'dibur echad. And I hear there's a famous Tosfos where Tosfos says, does it mean that what's kiddush? What does kiddush consist of? Does it mean also the kiddush with the wine? Is that also minatayra that women will be chayvin? So Tosfos says it's not the wine. The wine is just midrabanan. But there is one answer in Tosfos where Tosfos has a svara that even the wine itself is also minatayra. The drinking of the wine is midrabanan. Okay, that's
the first one. So what is kiddush without the wine?
Just you say Shabbos. You mentioned Shabbos just to be makana. With words, just with words. Correct. By night, the night of Shabbos. This is all talking about the Kiddush of the night of Shabbos.
Shabbos comes in.
Yeah. Now, that's by Kiddush. But over here, regarding the Shav and the Sheker, of a Shavuot, Lamai Hilchas Mi Boyele. What is the relevance that the Brisa is saying that Shav and Sheker is one thing? If there's no halacha, the Brisa is not stam saying that it was said and the Aseres HaDibros together. There's no nafkamina. So therefore, the Gemara changes and says, "You're right. Elo, the pshat on this brayse is regarding what are they the same? Kishem shaloi kal shav. Just like if a person makes a Shavuos shav, which is about the past, when he says regarding the past whether I ate or I did not eat, kach loy kanam yal sheker. So too, one would get malchus if he makes a Shavuos sheker referring to the future. Frek the Gemara, that's what the brayse is saying. Klapi lai. Which direction are you saying this? It should be the opposite. When a person makes a Shavuot about the past, which was not true, then there's no action in what he did, in the lie that he said. When he says a shvuah about the future, if he says, I will not eat, and then he goes ahead and eats, so the issa that he's doing to break the shvuah is an action. So for sure you would be chayav shvuah. How could you say that you chayav shvuah like the shvuah of the past? It should be the other way around. So the Gemara says, you're right. What the Brayse is saying is, Kishem, Shaloik al Sheker, just like a person gets malchus for a shvuah that he makes regarding the future, and he doesn't keep that shvuah with an action that he did, Kach Leikanami al Shav, so too you get malchus for a shvuah that you make regarding the past, which was not true, even though there's no action here. But on this as well, the Gemara asks, Pshita, this is obvious. Why is this obvious? Because high lav, v'high lav, both of them are a lav. Not so obvious, actually. Rashi here says the reason why it's obvious, even though the shvuah on the past there's no action that the person is doing, but there's a drasha from a pasuk even regarding the shvuah of the past, lo yinoke Hashem, which means that Hashem will not make him clean. But if he gets malchus, he will be clean. So from that you learn out that there will be malchus for this. The Rishonim ask, why does the Gemara say pshita on this? But the Gemara asks pshita that we already have a drasha from a pasuk that you get a malchus for the past. So the Gemara says, I would think that drasha of lo yinoke is not used for this. I would think kedamulet of Papa la Abaya. Like Rav Papa says to Abaya, and this is actually later over here in the next plot, that lo yinoke means klal. That the pasuk is saying lo yinoke, when you make a shvuah that's a lie for the past, he will not be purified at all, not even with malchus either. Kamash Malon, therefore, this Braisa is saying, Kedishani Lei, as Abaya answered Rav Papa, which will be here later on this daf, that you do get Malchus for this. Okay, let's just finish off the Inyan. The Gemara brings another few pshatim and what this Braisa meant when it compared Shavuos Shav to Shavuos Sheker, V'yibay Seimer. All the pshat over here is, Kisheim Shemevi Karban al Sheker, just like when you make a Shavuah and you don't keep your Shavuah regarding the future, so you bring a carbon for this, Kach Mevi Karban al Shav, so too a Shavuos Shav, you bring a carbon as well. And as I mentioned before, which Shavuos Shav are we talking about here? Not the Shavuos Shav that a person says on a piece of rock that it's a gold. Shavuos Shav when a person says something personal that not everybody knows regarding that I ate or I didn't eat regarding the past. On that, you bring a carbon as well. That's what the Bryce is saying. And who is this? Rabbi Kivi. This Bryce is Rabbi Kivi, the Mechayev l'sha'avar k'lahaba. That says, Yechayev shvuah on the past, just like for the future. Okay, stop over here. Question on this? Okay, stop over here.